Who invented soda? Ask a Brit, they will say Priestley. Ask a Hungarian, and they will fight you for Ányos Jedlik. But the truth is actually hidden in a 17th century wood shortage at a French perfume shop. After a quick Google search, I learned that sparkling water originates from Britain. But this is just simply not what I was taught in school. In Hungary, it is part of the national pride that a Hungarian scientist invented sparkling water to give a twist to his wine. So I googled other nations too to see how many claims there are on carbonated water. This led me to France, Sweden, Germany and Switzerland. But of course, the United States is the place of birth of today's soda. But why was it introduced in a pharmacy? The real story doesn't start with a laboratory, and not even in the 1800s. It starts with a stinky, mildly sparkling liquid with minerals that aristocrats purchased for a dear price. Torbjörn Bergman in Sweden, Gabriel Venel in France, Johann Jakob Schweppe in Switzerland, Joseph Priestley in Britain and Jedlik Ányos in Hungary are all inventors working on the same thing to replace natural fizzy water. Natural springs were used since ancient times, but it became a business in the 1500s. In 1559, the first scientific study was published, documenting the different pohons, springs, in Spa. Spa is a town in Belgium, which became famous in the 1300s for its iron-rich sparkling springs. The term Spa comes from here. The study concluded that the bubbly springs of Spa were particularly effective for invigorating the spirit and aiding digestion. It didn't take much time for the merchants to figure out they could earn money with this. Around the 1580s, they began commercially bottling the natural water of Spa. They delivered it in stone bottles to royalty and aristocrats. The water from Niedersachsen, Germany, became so famous for its heavy carbonation and healthy benefits that by the 1780s they were exporting over 6 million bottles a year worldwide. So the business grew steadily, but with one shortcoming. The water got flat during transportation. Needless to say, the dear price tag made the consumers feel improvement in their health regardless. This is how Gabriel Venel in France got inspired. In 1750, Venel presented his analysis on Sartre's water to the French Academy of Sciences. His primary motivation was to identify what caused the bubbles. He figured it out that the bubbles were gases, but he thought they came from the atmosphere. So the method he developed to produce fizzy water was based on false premises and wasn't too successful. He was driven by curiosity, but Joseph Priestley of Britain wanted to solve practical problems. In 1776 he moved to Leeds, by accident next to a brewery. While visiting the brewery, Priestley noticed a thick layer of gas hovering about 12 to 15 inches above the surface of the fermenting liquor in the vats. He saw that this gas extinguished candles and that smoke from a piece of paper would float on top of it, revealing the surface of the gas. He knew from previous scientific readings about fixed air, that's carbon dioxide, but he had never seen it in such massive accessible quantities. This is how he started his experiments to get that carbon dioxide into the water. Here we have to make a little detour. Didn't people know that sparkling water, bubbles in beer and sparkling wine have something in common? Not until Joseph Priestley. They had various ideas about bubbles, from being caused by rotting vegetables to the act of the devil, but most importantly, alcoholic beverages and healthy mineral water seemed simply to be chalk and cheese. So when Joseph Priestley produced sparkling water by carbon dioxide from beer fermentation, it was a crucial scientific stepping stone. But let's clarify his motivation. He wanted to solve a huge problem of the Navy. Fresh water stored in wooden barrels on ships quickly became stagnant, slimy and foul-smelling. He noticed that fizzy water lasts longer, but he had another assumption too. Scientists of his time believed that scurvy was a form of rotting. It was a consensus that fixed air, carbon dioxide, was a powerful antiseptic that could prevent rot. So Priestley assumed if he could produce carbonated water, it would prevent the body from rotting and keep the water fresh longer at the same time. A few decades later, Ányos Jedlik, a Benedictine monk and teacher in the Habsburg Empire, more precisely in Hungary, had a similar motivation to Priestley. In his era, in the early 1800s, cholera spread across Europe in multiple waves. At the time, doctors believed that carbonated water could help prevent the spread of the disease. While Schweppe was selling to King of England, Jedlik was looking at Hungarian peasants and thinking, how do I make this cheap enough for them to mix with their wine? Jedlik wanted to produce a healthy, clean beverage that could be distributed widely and cheaply, so a higher share of the population could be saved. He wasn't the first who aimed for cheaper production. Torbjörn Bergman, a professor in Sweden, was sick and needed large amounts of mineral water that he couldn't afford to import. He started his experiments in 1771. And Johann Jakob Schweppe was developing a cheaper production method too, but he was considering business opportunities. If we make a timeline with the motivation of the scientific research, we can see the evolution of the idea. Gabriel Venel proved that it is in fact possible to artificially create fizzy water. Joseph Priestley identified that bubbles are made of carbon dioxide, so this made later experiments more focused. Torbjörn Bergman found a way to produce a larger quantity of carbon dioxide, and Johann Jakob Schweppe invented a mechanical pump to force gas into water. Ányos Jedlik invented an integrated machine that is producing gas and bottling the water at the same time. Now, let's see how alcohol influenced the solutions. Before champagne was introduced, bubbles were often considered a major technical flaw. If wine started sparkling, it was usually because it had fermented a second time by accident in the bottle. This caused bottles to explode in cellars, earning it the nickname the devil's wine. Dom Pérignon, a French monk, actually spent much of his career trying to get rid of the bubbles because he thought they were a sign of poor winemaking. And frankly, it was. This is why they weren't even looking for stronger glass bottles. Here we have to make another detour. It was very unexpected what I learned about glass. It again has something to do with the British Navy. In the early 1600s, England faced a major environmental crisis, deforestation. Glassmakers and ironworkers were burning massive amounts of wood to fuel their furnaces. King James I was terrified that England would run out of timber to build ships for the Royal Navy. The king issued a royal decree banning the use of wood to fire glass furnaces. Glassmakers were forced to switch to coal or go out of business. This switch wasn't as simple as it sounds. Coal has a higher burning temperature, so glassmakers had to apply a series of changes in their production methods. They had to build larger brick-lined furnaces with tall chimneys, had to modify the chemical mix and use closed pots. As the glass in the making had higher temperature, the cooling process got longer and the glass became tougher. Sir Kenelm Digby, a pirate, courtier and amateur scientist, is often credited with perfecting the modern wine bottle shape in the 1630s. Digby experimented with the new coal-fired furnaces to create a bottle with thick walls to withstand transport, the punt, the deep indentation at the bottom which reinforced the base against internal pressure, and the string lip, a ring of glass at the top where a cork could be tied down with a wire. At the time, French wine, including champagne, was shipped to London and Dublin in barrels. English merchants would bottle it themselves using Digby's new strong bottles. These bottles then conquered France. The French often call this type of heavy glass verre inglés, English glass. So at this point we finally know two things. How did they connect carbon dioxide with fizziness? And how did the English bottles withstand the higher pressure? But how did the science of soda making become a business? Torbjörn Bergman was inspired by Joseph Priestley's work, but he was also deeply frustrated by it. Their relationship represents a classic scientific transition. Priestley discovered the how, and Bergman figured out the how much. Bergman was a respected professor of chemistry in Sweden and a member of the same elite scientific circles as Priestley. He had read Priestley's 1772 paper, Impregnating Water with Fixed Air. Bergman recognized that Priestley had solved the mystery of how to make artificial mineral water, but as a scientific chemist, Bergman found Priestley's brewery method unscientific and inefficient. For the record, Priestley poured water from one jar into another over a vat of fermenting liquor. That was his method. So Bergman designed a heavy-duty apparatus made of lead and glass. It used a dripping system where sulfuric acid was slowly dropped onto a chalk, that's calcium carbonate. This was the first continuous gas generator. By controlling the drip of the acid, you could produce a steady, high-volume stream of CO2 on demand, anywhere in the world without needing a beer vat. This made the production of gas industrial for the first time. Priestley relied on the gas naturally dissolving into the water by shaking it. Bergman improved this by adding a steering rod inside a water vessel. By steering the water while the gas was being pumped from a generator, he forced the water to absorb the CO2 much faster than Priestley's pouring method. This sounds like Mr. Bergman was so much better. In reality, there was plenty of room for improvement. Even with Bergman's glass, the water wasn't very fizzy. Carbon dioxide doesn't like to stay in water at normal atmospheric pressure. It escapes almost immediately, leaving the water flat. So, Johann Jakob Schweppe in Switzerland started his experiments with Bergman's machine, aiming to improve it. He added a powerful hand-cranked compression pump between the gas generator and the water tank. Instead of just letting the water soak up the gas, he forced the gas into the water under high pressure. This created highly aerated water. This level of carbonation was much higher than anything found in nature. It also allowed the water to stay fizzy even after being bottled and shipped. He turned soda into a stable, shippable product, but the process was fragmented. You made gas in one machine, pumped into a tank in another, and then manually bottled it. This was slow, expensive, and much of the gas escaped during the transfer. Regardless, Schweppe became successful. But when the cholera outbreak hit Europe, the need for cheaper soda water increased. Ányos Jedlik in Hungary was who turned fizzy water from luxury to an accessible product, at least in Central Europe. Jedlik's machine combined a gas generator and a saturation tank into a single unit. This minimized the gas leakage. But he understood that if you try to pour high-pressure soda into an empty bottle, it foams up and the gas escapes. His machine pressurized the bottle with air, gas first, and then allowed the water to flow in. This kept the fizz trapped inside during the sealing process. His pure genius was the invention of the siphon. A tube went to the bottom of the bottle and a spring-loaded lever opened the valve. The high internal pressure did the work, pushing the water out through the tube while keeping the gas bucket at the top. This allowed for incremental consumption, a huge advantage over Schweppe's bottles, which went flat the moment the cork was pulled. But Jedlik was a Benedictine monk and a teacher. He wasn't a ruthless capitalist like Johann Jakob Schweppe. His primary goal was to provide a cheap, healthy drink for the Hungarian people. His scientific papers were published in Hungarian and German, which limited their reach to the English-speaking scientific world that was dominated by the Royal Society. Just a few years later, Joseph Bramah came to Jedlik's conclusion on his own regarding the integrated pump system. And in 1829, two Frenchmen, two Parisian jewelers, Deleuze and Dullier, patented a siphon head, which used a corkscrew and a valve. It was a valve screwed in the cork. Jedlik's version was arguably superior in its mechanical durability, but because the French patent was registered in Paris, the siphon became a global phenomenon under French influence. It is worth mentioning, Jedlik's siphon was designed to be refilled at the factory. While the French version was often a gadget for home use, Jedlik's siphon was part of a circular economy. You would buy a siphon, finish it, and return to the heavy glass bottle to his factory to be cleaned and repressurized. In essence, English glass enabled storing higher pressure liquids in bottles. Dober and Bergman introduced more control in the gas producing process. Johann Jakob Schweppe began to add gas to the water under pressure. Ányos Jedlik and Joseph Bramah introduced the idea of combined gas production and bottling, along with the idea of pre-pressurized bottle at the filling. Ányos Jedlik and Deleuze and Dullier invented two kinds of siphon. This paved the way to the ultimate beverage, the flavoured soda. Dr. Philip Singh Physic, a prominent Philadelphia surgeon, the father of American surgery, believed carbonated water could cure gastric disorders. He lacked a machine, so he collaborated with a local pharmacist named Townsend Speakman. To make the medicine more palatable for his patients, he asked Speakman to add fruit juices. This is widely considered the first flavored soda in the US. However, it was still treated strictly as a prescription. The next big step was introduced by John Matthews in 1832. He was an English-born engineer who moved to New York. Matthews had apprenticed with Joseph Bramah, who pioneered the integrated pumping bottling system in England. Matthews arrived in the United States with the technical knowledge to build massive, reliable soda-making machinery. He was the one who invented the American soda fountain. This one. He mass-produced cast-iron apparatuses that allowed any pharmacist to make and dispense soda water on site. He turned soda into a social experiment, providing the hardware that made the industry possible. But ultimately, it was Eugene Russell who started the soda craze. He was a French perfume and mineral water shop owner in Philadelphia. Russell took Matthews' hardware and physics idea of flavoring and turned it into a consumer craze. Unlike Physic, who added syrup at the moment of serving, Russell was the first to bottle pre-flavored soda. He used his background in perfume making to create sophisticated syrups like lemon, ginger, and vanilla. By 1839, he was producing 500 dozen bottles of flavored soda a day. He proved that soda didn't need to be medicine. It could just be a delicious beverage. An innocent question like, who invented soda, led me into a deep rabbit hole of English glass, Belgian and German natural water, medicine, and entrepreneurs. This is the History Rabbit Holes channel. I make videos about my journey through various topics in history. My name is Istvan. I studied history, geography, and global history. Whenever I hear a question about history, I dig deep, and from the good stuff I make videos. Don't miss out on the next one, subscribe, and thanks for watching.